Hello, my name's Karen. So today we are going to be doing a big huge fat bird like this. Now you don't need to make it as big as this, you can do a smaller one, it's entirely up to you, and we're going to be doing it with pinch pots. Alright, so my pinch pots were slightly gigantic, which is why I have a beautiful, beautiful large bird. Okay. So what you need and what I've got is I've got my table covered and I've used black bin bags. I have a mat, so you can use a mat, or I've got a plank of wood to work on, but if you don't have any of that you can work straight onto the black bin bags and that'll be fine. I've got a tub of water or a wee bowl of water. I've got a sponge, but you'll have a nice clean sponge like this. And I've got some tools as well, so exactly the same things what you guys will have. And I've got some slip because you'll need that. Okay, so that's all what I've got. Got clay, so you'll have your clay, you'll slice it up and you'll want 2 balls of clay. Alright, so once you've made your balls of clay, make sure they're nice and round, so you can just keep rolling it around in a wee circle until they're nice and round, nice and simple. Okay, so once you're happy with that, again, 2 thumbs in the middle and just slowly push the clay outwards as you're working. Okay, so the thumbs go in here and you just circle the clay about until you get there. Okay, and you keep doing that all the way around. And once you're happy with it, now this is the thing, pinch pots are not meant to be as thick as this, but to do the big huge fat bird, it might be helpful if you have it a little bit thicker than normal. So don't worry about the thickness just yet, we'll get to that at a later point. So get one, does not need to be perfect just yet, get your other ball and make sure you have the pinch pot for the second one. And you just keep doing that until you've got your 2 pinch pots all the way around. So when you're actually wanting them to be slightly the same size, they don't need to be perfect, just about the usual kind of thing, but you're like, that's not going to be big enough, okay? So you keep doing that, and if you're like, but my hands are too small to get in there, that's fine. You put your wee fist in and you can just give it just an extra wee help just to get the shape. Nothing wrong with doing a small cheeky cheats, nothing wrong with that at all. You've got one, and just get a wee, and just give it a wee push and just make sure it's nice. So then, when you're doing this, it should be roughly, give or take, depending on how good your pinch pot size balls were, roughly about the same size. So they cut like this. So it's a bit like the funky fish, you're joining them together, that's what we're doing, but not to panic if you like, but it doesn't not look like the size that we're doing. That's fine. You're either going to be a big huge bird or it's going to be a small bird. Any size of bird is going to be right, so let's not panic about that. Okay, so you've done your 2 pinch pots and you want to make sure that you add slip. So remember, adding slip, you've got to make sure you groove it first. So I always do kisses all the way around. So the best way to do it is kisses. If you're like, and we don't really have those tools and I always really forget about that, you can use an old toothbrush. When I say old, means the one that you're not using still. Old toothbrush, and you can dip it in and that scores the edges at the same time as adding slip. Okay, that's a wee cheeky cheat for you as well if you want. So make sure you score it first if you're using these tools all the way around. And you want to make sure you do this, because if you do not do this, your big huge bird is most likely going to fall apart. So it's really important that you remember to do this and add everything. So slip, and if it's a wee bit thick or a wee bit gunky, you can add more water, you can give it a wee stir just to make sure you add it, okay? And if you want to do an extra wee cheat, nothing wrong, you put your sponge in the water You don't want lots, just a wee bit. And just give it a wee extra helping hand, smooth it round. Nothing wrong with that at all. And then just add some slip all the way around to it. Probably should be a wee bit runnier, but that's fine. You don't want it too runny. It's like that happy medium. Not too runny and not too thick. You just add it. Now, it doesn't need to be really neat when you're adding it, so you don't need to panic about that. Now, it's also a good time to point out that as you're doing a bird, we don't need to worry about if you're going to have flat bases, because you'll be working with them and making it into the shape of the bird. Okay, so do not panic if you have things maybe a wee bit too thick in the bottom, or if it's just too flat, you're not happy with it. Not to panic about it, because we'll be fixing all that as we go through. Okay, so we just need the basics of getting the 2 pinch pots sorted, adding slip, and then you're going to be joining them together. Make sure you're happy with them. Okay, again, you're like, are they perfectly joined? Don't panic about that, because we're going to smooth them up and join them. So see where the ridge is here? Gently push it up, a bit like with the funky fish, but this time you're not leaving a gap for the mouth, because obviously we're doing a big huge fat bird. And then it's up to you how you do it. So when with the funky fish, you are leaving a gap to make sure it doesn't explode in the kiln. This time you'll be making sure it's nice and sealed, but you will be poking a hole in it to make sure it doesn't explode in the kiln. So it's very important to remember that it's the same kind of skills and techniques that you're using, but you're making something slightly different. Nothing wrong with that, okay? But we'll be remembering where you're going to be putting the holes in, just in case, because we do not want any accidental damage to your beautiful piece of art or to anyone else's. Okay, so you're like, but Karen, I've now attached it, but it doesn't look nice and smooth like yours. That's fine. You use the sponge and you just gently run it around. You don't want it too watery, because otherwise it becomes slimy, and you do not want slime. I know it might be fun to work with on occasions, but other times it's not. So just smooth it all the way around, make sure it's nice where you've got the joins. And then if you see a bit and you're like, it's still not working, just give it a wee rub. So I'm just wee rubbing the joins just round there. Just make sure they're nice and even. So again, you don't need perfection. We are not looking for perfection at this stage. And remember, whatever you make will be perfect. So just give it a wee rub. So this is just to make sure it's all nicely sealed and joined, because of how we're going to be doing the bird. Because obviously the bird is not facing up the way, it's facing this way. So it's really important that the joins are quite nice and secure, because can you imagine that? Unless it's going to be like an Easter treat of where you're going to hide chocolate inside later, it's not good if it falls apart. It can be quite devastating. So nice and smooth. So there we go, nice and smooth. So as you'll notice, mine sank a wee bit. So yours is going to probably do that, because you're going to have nice fresh clay as well. So if it sits a wee bit heavier on the bottom, don't panic. You're going to gently spin it there and just give it a wee roll. And yes, that is where you've joined it, so you've got to be nice and careful with it. Just a wee bit of roll, okay? So it gets to the shape, and gently press it down. So I'm using the flat of my pan and I'm just gently pressing it down. And there's a reason. So I want a nice shape, and then if you look at my lovely bird, the body's quite round. Don't worry about the tail, we'll be adding that later. But you've got where the head is. Now you will be making a head to attach, but you want to get the body maybe a wee bit more bird shape, so you gently press it down until you're happy, and then you can give it a nice wee squeezy the side of where you're liking the idea of what you're wanting. And I know it's a wee bit of a challenge, because you're like, Karen, I've not added the tail or the wings and the head, so I don't really quite know what I'm looking for. That's fine. Just give it just a wee squeeze until you're happier with it, okay? And if you're like, but I'm now sticking to the clay, maybe it's drying out. No, it's not, it'll be fine. But if you're feeling it's drying out because you've been working it really hard, then you give it a nice little bit of water, not lots, just a wee bit, and that will just smooth out any concerns that you may have with any issues. Okay, so once you've done that, you'll be like, okay, now I have a ball and it's hollow inside. Excellent. Do I poke a hole in it now? No, not yet, not yet. You're going to do the head next. So you need a small bit of clay, not a lot. Now this is where it depends on how big your body is, would depend on how big your head should be. But roll with it. Remember, you've got lots of different kind of birds and animals that have different size of bodies and heads. So we're nothing to panic about if you end up with a big body and a tiny head. It's only too tiny if you're like, that's a tiny, tiny head. In which case, grab small clay. So you make a wee ball, hands recircle, and if you're like, that's very difficult, what do I do now? Just put it on the table if you find it too hard and just roll that, okay? So here is where you're making a small pinch pot. 2 thumbs in, but you're like, my hands are too big for that, that's okay. You will have a wee pencil or a paintbrush, you use the tip of it, and you dip it in, and you just circle it around like that until you've got a wee shape that you're liking. And you keep doing that until you've got a nice wee pinch pot. If your hands are too big, if you are very lucky and you've got tiny hands and no fingernails, then you can make a nice wee pinch pot. And you just do the same thing with the small one as you did with the big one. The only thing that you have to be careful about is that you don't poke a hole in it all through to the bottom, because that wouldn't be good. So, got a wee pinch pot, you've got your body. I decided this is where my head's going to go because this is where my tail's going to go. So my bird is going to be like a puffed up bird, a bit like this one, but this one's going to be a lot larger apparently. So a fatter bird to go with the other fat bird I've made. So again, you have to slip it. So remember, you've got to score it all the way around. And make sure you do both ends. So I always do kisses, the way I always say to people do kisses, because you really want to make sure it's heavily scored all the way around. And this is where you've got to remember, very important detail, that if you're attaching it to the body or to another bit of clay, that you have to score where you're attaching it to. So because I'm not perfect and these things are, I like to make sure I grab the whole entire area, because remember, you're going to smooth it out anyway, so may as well just cover all bases and do bigger scorers all the way through. And remember, you're not cutting into the clay and making holes, and you're just marking the clay so it has something to actually attach to. That's the whole point. And then you add your slip all the way around. And then I would also add a little bit of slip roughly around here and around. So it should be a nice attachment, and gently put it on like that. I know you're like, is it going to stick? It will, it'll stick. And what you're going to do is you're going to gently press and all the way around. Now if you're like, it's not really working, if it's not working for you, I'm quite lucky, I've got long fingernails, so I use my fingernail to push it, but not everyone likes to do that. So you can use your tool, back of your tool, your plastic tool. You can either the back of it and just gently push it, because remember it's nice flesh clay, so it should be easily joined like this and all the way around. And make sure you get the underneath as well. And you can even give it a wee turn or gently pick it up. It's entirely up to you, and just make sure you get the underneath joined as well. Okay, so it's like that. And now you're like, but Karen, it looks a wee bit messy. That's fine, that's why we have a sponge, and you can just smooth it in to make sure you just use a smooth and just make sure it's got a nice seamless join. Now, I know you're thinking, Karen, it does not look like a bird yet. It's fine, we're going to work with it and make sure you have what you actually want it to be looking like. So, first smooth it all out. Okay, so here, this is where you got, this was your base, remember, your pinch pot, and you've attached it. So, we pinchers, so your thumb and your first finger, and just gently work the clay into the shape of the bird's head. Okay, just gently work it. Okay. And you just continue doing that until you're happy with it. So both up at the top and round at the sides. And just keep doing that. Okay, so that's how it looks on the front. On the side, that's how it looks. And if you're thinking, it still doesn't look quite how I want it, remember you can always trim things down, or you can keep moving the clay about a wee bit with your fingers, just so you're happy with the shape of the bird that you're getting. Okay, nothing to panic about. Okay, so if you're not happy with it and you're like, oh, it's getting a wee bit dry because I keep working with it, add a little bit of water like that, leave that out, and just gently keep moving the clay until you're happy. And sometimes you'll be like, I need to pick it up to see what it looks like. That's fine. If you think you're the type of person that needs to see what it looks like, you can do a gentle lift up and have it turned to face you to see if you're happy with it. And then if you're needing to do anything else, you can do that. And then you should be fine. If however you're thinking, Karen, I don't really like it, I think I've made my pinch pot too big on the bottom, what do I do to fix it? Okay, so if you're thinking, I want my head to be a wee bit more like this one, don't panic, that's fine. You can always fix things, okay? Nothing to sort out. So if you're thinking it's too big and you want a wee haircut, best way to describe it, use your wee tool and just gently take away some of the excess clay if that's how you're feeling, okay? Nothing wrong with it, just give it a wee haircut and you can just leave it on the side, okay? Just a wee trim if that's what you want to do. You don't need to do it if you're happy. If you're happy with it, then just leave it. If you're like, but I'd like to do it a little bit, then nothing wrong with that at all, okay? Give it a wee haircut, right? So, now, before we do anything else, the best time is now to add the holes in the head. Remember, because you'll need to do a hole for the body and you need to do a hole for the head, because that's two separate pieces joined together, okay? So any kind of tool you have, anything that's pokey or sharp, just poke it in. I'm using a wee skinny tool and I'm doing it right at the nostrils, so it's like hidden, but it's in. And I'll make sure it's fully in, so there. So it goes with the actual animal. So the nostrils in, that's where the holes are. So it means any air or steam that's building up when it's getting fired, it can escape. And therefore there should not be any unfortunate accidents in the kill. Okay, and then we'll leave that. So that's how it's looking just now. And now you're like, but what about the wings? That's fine. What we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to gently move this to the side just now, whilst we get out the wings. So, I've already, as a sneak cheat, rolled out some clay. That's fine. So, you can roll out some clay and you'll be fine with it. If you're like, Karen, I don't have a rolling pin, that's fine. You can use your palm of your hand and you just gently press it out. It might take you a while, but you would get there. Okay, so gently roll it out and make sure you're happy with what you've got. Now I'm going to gently lift this off. Now you don't need a lot of clay for this, so if you have excess and you've went a little bit overboard, don't panic about it, just thin it out. Remember, you roll up the excess and use it as something else with the other project, so nothing to panic about. So gently press it out and see if you're happy with that. If you're like, I've now dented it, Karen, what do I do? If you've dented it, then just flip it over and you've got a nice other side. Now remember, when you're attaching it to the bird, we'll be smoothing it out anyway. So any wee creases or dents, it doesn't matter because you're going to be smoothing it out, okay? So the bird shape for the wings, if you see it here, so it's like a leaf, a big leaf shape, not a gigantic leaf shape, but a big leaf shape. So you want two of them, one for each side, and then you want a tail, and the tail is, the best way to describe it is like a nice V, but with a flat base. Like a roof, think of a roof. Okay, so I'm going to gently just do some nice pointy shapes like that. Now, if you end up wings being a wee bit smaller than what you think your bird deserves, that's fine. You can have bigger ones, you can flatten it out a wee bit more with the palm of the hand. You want them slightly similar, but they don't need to be identical, so nothing to panic about. Let's see if we can use up clay. Just move it about and then give it another little cut all the way round, and there we go. So it doesn't need to be perfect because we'll be working with it, okay? And then I will just do my tail, and I've made my tail quite large actually, but you can slice it down, not to panic, we'll slice it down. Okay, so those are my three items. They look exceedingly large, but nothing to panic. And then you just move that clay out your way. I've got a mat down beside me, so that's where mine's going. And then I'm covering it up so I can use it as a next project. So if you've got spare clay, please remember to cover it up to keep it fresh for next time. So I've got my wings, so they're quite thick, so I gently heel and just gently press it down, okay? So it makes it a wee bit bigger and it also thins it out, so you're going to end up with bigger wings for your big bird. Well, for me, I've got a big bird. You might have a small bird, you might have a medium bird, or you might, like me, have a gigantic bird. That's fine. So again, heel goes down and gently press it, okay? Now remember, you're going to be working on this when you attach it, so again, don't worry about the shape. If you're like, I don't like the shape, nothing to panic about. Now, a tail, which is the important bit, is going to be going on. But that looks like a gigantic tail. So we can give it a little haircut. Maybe thinking, I like the width, but I don't really like how long it is. That's fine, you can give it a wee cut. And again, you'll be working on the shape when you attach it. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to attach the end tail, okay? So again, the same as what you're doing with the heads and the two, well, essentially the body and the head. So the two pinch pots joined together to make the body, and then the head pinch pot to then attach it. You've got to slip and score it. So anything that you're attaching needs to be slipped and scored, okay? So just gently score it. Now, this is really important to remember. If it's too skinny, it's going to dry really quick and most likely break off. If it's too fat, it will take ages to dry and it will be too fat, as in the clay. So you've got to have that happy medium of how thick the clay is. And if you're thinking it's too fat, what do? If I've already slipped and scored it, then you give it a wee scoosh, a wee gentle touch with the heel of your palm, like what you did with the wings, okay? And again, slip and score, where you are adding it on the body. Now, it's up to you where you add the tail, okay? So you can either test it out before you attach it, see if you're happy with it, and also think about the positioning of the angle of the tail. Do you want it raised up? Do you want it down? Do you want it, do you know what I mean? It's up to you, okay? So attach it, make sure you've added a slip and score in both bits, and once you've done that, just gently press it in. And if you're thinking, Karen, this time I've added all the stuff and I've done exactly what you're saying, but I feel I might want an extra wee safety precaution to make sure it stays attached, that's fine. What you can do is you roll out a wee bit of clay just between your fingers, or even on the table, just give it a wee roll, okay? Nothing wrong with having extra protection around your tail, because it is going to be one of the weak areas until it's dry and fired, okay? So it's always good to have a little bit of extra protection around it, okay? So nothing wrong with that, okay? And you can just add a little bit up at the top. So that's what I'm doing, up at the top, and just gently all the way around, okay? And that just gives it something else, a wee bit of extra protection of where the join is, okay? And again, you've got to make sure that you firmly make sure it's all happily attached, okay? So gently work with it and put it in. So again, you'll be using your tool. I'm just using my fingers, but you can use your tool or you can use your fingers. Just make sure it's nicely joined like this, okay? Now, if you've done the top, now don't forget that you need to do the underneath as well. It's really important that you do the underneath, okay? So if that means that you need to gently hold it like this, okay? You don't want to sit it down this way, otherwise you'll have a flat base for the head, and you don't really want to do that. And you just gently work it. Make sure it's all gently in. There we go. Really smooth. And there we go. Okay. So if it still stayed attached after you moving the bird about, then it's looking good. That's how you know it's looking good. Okay. If it's fallen off, then you add, remember, a little bit more clay, roll it, add some slip and attach it. Gives it the extra support that you think your tail might need, okay? So now we've got the tail, so we've got the head, we've got the body, and we've got the tail. We now need to add the wings to the bird. So here's what my bird's going to look like roughly. Okay, so it's up to you where you position your wings. So on this one, my wings are a little bit further back because we're going to shape it a wee bit more, and then they're slightly over the tail. They don't need to be, it's entirely up to you on how you want to do it. Again, this will depend on how big you made your wings. So if you made tiny wings, you might just want to just go with it and just put it closer to the head. If you made bigger wings, then you might want it closer to the tail. So, like so, okay? Again, there's no right or wrong, it's just whatever you think works best. Okay, so I'm going to put my wings this way. So again, when I'm attaching things, I've got to slip and score everything. So this time you want to make sure it's all really big because all of this is getting attached. Okay, so again, I want to make sure it's all slipped and scored. You. I'm making sure I put lots on. So you want to make sure you put enough on that is not going to do any accidental falling off when it's drying. Nothing worse than to have a bird with no wings. Okay, so you want to make sure there's enough on it. Okay, and again, gently attaching it. And now, this is where you've got to make sure, once you've got firmly down, you can have that either over or touching, up to you. So that's what mine looks like just now. And again, where you're doing the tail and the head, you've got to make sure you gently, make sure it's gently attached. And I'm using my thumb for that, to gently do that. If you don't like doing that, then you will use your tool, whichever tool you're working with. You can either use the top of the tool and press it down, so this is a flat-edged plastic tool, or you can use the round edge at the base, and there's other tools that you've got that will be round. It's up to you which one you like to work with. Okay, entirely up to you. All the way around. And then if you like, but I'd like it a wee bit more pointy, then just gently give it a wee squeeze and you're happy with that. Okay, there we go. And if you're like, oh, I want it a wee bit more attached, then just add a wee bit more smoothing up at the top. No harm with that whatsoever. And again, if you're thinking you've done a lot of work with the clay, then add a wee bit more water on top. And I think it's quite relevant to point out, I'm a cold person, so my hands are quite cold, so the clay stays a lot more unheated, in other words it doesn't dry out a lot for me, whilst other people have got really hot hands, so the clay dries out a lot quicker. So don't panic if the clay dries out quicker. It just means that you've got really hot hands and you just need to maybe be a wee bit more careful with either how much you handle it, or make sure that you actually apply water to it to make sure it doesn't dry out too much. Okay, so make sure you add some water to the base, and you actually tidy up the base of the wing as well, because you want to make sure it's a nice seamless join. Okay, that's the trick, is to make sure it's a seamless join. Okay, seamless join. And if that's where you need to do an extra rub under it to make sure it looks like a nice defined shape. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Okay. So that's one wing. So if you turn it around, you're like, Karen, that looks like a big huge fat pigeon. That's fine. If it looks like a big huge fat pigeon, excellent. If you're like, I don't like it, I want it to be a bit thinner. Now remember, you've not added the other wing, so it looks a wee bit lopsided. But just in case you're like, I still don't like it and I don't want to attach it, that's fine. Use your pans and just give it a gentle poof and puff it up. So it puffs it up a wee bit. So look at that, look at that. You're like, wow. Okay, and you're like, oh, I just want to press it down there. So you can still work on it before you attach the other one. Entirely up to you. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to attach my other wing. So we've got a nice even peeled bird. And again, if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. We'll just move the bird to the side. So again, you can see what I'm doing. So remember what we did before, we scored it. So again, I always say little kisses, that's what it looks like. Okay. Or cross hatching for anyone that really wants to be really fancy. It turns. Okay, so I've scored it, and then I want to add some slip. Make sure you cover it all. And this is where you might think, oh, I can just attach it. We don't need to worry about scoring that thing. Remember, you always want to score where you're attaching it to. It's so easy to forget about it, and then that's when accidents happen. Okay, so I want to give it a wee score. Now again, it doesn't need to be perfect where you're putting it, because remember, you're going to be smoothing it out with the sponge afterwards anyway, so we don't need to worry about that. Just make sure you're happy with your positioning of your wing. Again, if it's not perfect, that's fine, you can move it down and make sure you're happy with it, okay? And then gently, again, press it in. You can use your thumb or your finger, or again with the tool, and you just press it in all the way around, okay? And make sure you bring it down, okay? So all the way down and all the way around, and just gently attach it, okay? All the way around. And I'm just making sure I've got the tip of the wing the way I want it. A nice wee smooth bit there. Just make sure it's a nice seamless join. Seamless join. Do the sides and under it. Just need to give it a wee rub to get the shape again, that's fine. So as you work along, you'll know what you kind of need to do, because you'll be like, oh, I'd like to do this, then just go for it, okay? So that's how my bird's looking just now. So I've got the head, I've got the beak, I've got the body, I've got the wings, and I've got the tail, okay? So my tail's all looking on, and it's all looking good. So you might want to add some extra details. So the first thing that you want to do is the eyes. So we're going back to the head. Now remember, you don't want to cover where the nostrils are, but if you feel the need, if you think, I might have already handled the head and cover the nostrils, it's nothing wrong with taking the tool and poking it again, just in case, so you've got a nice, clear, seamless hole, okay? So for the eyes, just a little bit of clay, you don't need a lot. Just a little bit, and this is where maybe just a wee bit of water instead of some slip, okay? And think about where you're attaching it, and do a gentle press, okay? And then you can give it a nice wee press in, and there you go. So that's one eye, and that's what I'm going to do with the next one. Again, just a wee pinch. And again, I'm just adding a little bit of water, because I just thought it was just going to be a nice. And again, just gentle press, and then so it's a wee bit level. Use the end of my tool. So I've got a paintbrush. If you've got a pencil, you can do that, and just give it a wee press. So that's how it's looking. So I've got two eyes, I've got the nostrils are fine. Got the wings, got the tail. Now what I'm going to do, so we've got a wee bit of extra detail. You don't need lots of detail in this. You can put as much detail as you want, but a wee bit. I'm going to use either the tool, or you can use your plastic tool, whichever ones you've got. I'll use my plastic tool, and I'm just going to put, using the back of it, I'm going to put some lines in it, because that'll look like tail feathers, okay? So you can do that for the sides as well, just some nice wee simple lines. Now remember, if you don't like it, you've done it and you don't like it, you can use the sponge and just rub it out and you'll be fine, okay? So do one side and I'll do the other side, just so we've got a nice idea. And it's up to you how you want to apply it, okay? So that, and then this is just where you just do any smoothing and joins, make sure you've got everything the way you want it. Okay, so it should be nice and smooth. Now remember, we've done holes for the head, but we've not done any for the body yet. So it's up to you on where you want to put the hole for the body, okay? I would normally do it, if you do it under the wing, then it's a nice place that nobody's really going to be looking, okay? And if you want an extra one, for any reason, if you think, oh, it's a bit of a excess big huge bird, you might want to put an extra hole in, that's fine. I'm going to put it in at the other side of the wing, just so there's places for the air to escape, okay? So I've got a hole in the head and I've got a hole in the body. So that would be nice, and we just let it dry. So as long as you're happy with it, then you can let that sit and dry, and it should be nice and smooth. So we have the big bird, I'll just bring them in front of you, and then we've got a fatter, bigger bird, okay? And that's the first project done. For the secret project, we'll just move these out of the way. Your excess clay, which you'll most likely have, to keep with the wee shapes and things that you could be doing, because you're not seeing lots of family members just now, or friends, maybe you are, maybe you're the lucky few. You've got excess clay, you can roll it up. And this is what I've been doing with some of my friends and families. I've been giving them, I call them fish kisses, and everyone's like, oh. It's basically, you're going with the same shape as you made for the wings, and you're just doing nice basic, like teardrop shapes, okay? So with them, you could fire them and glaze them up and paint them if you like. Do you really need to like glaze them up? Not if you don't want to, you don't need to. You can just let them dry them out. If you can definitely bring them into fire, go for it. And then you can paint them with acrylic paint if you really want to give them out quickly to your family members. And if you're like, how do I tidy it really nicely? So if your sponge is still wet, just smooth it on top of it, and that just tidies up those edges quite nicely without having to worry about any additional hard work. Okay. And if you're like, but what happens if I don't want to do like kisses and I want to do something else? I want to actually make something to give to them. That's fine, you can do that. I will show you something else that you can do with them. You can make a wee production of them. So I like jewellery, and I like to give jewellery as well. So earrings are quite a handy wee thing. So if you're going to make some earrings out of it, my advice would be, everyone would tell you to do the top. But that's going to be your weakest part, because obviously it's the smallest and skinniest part you're poking a hole in it. So it's probably a good idea if you do it at the base of where it's the bigger bit, and you just bring it in. Make sure you've got a nice hole, and make sure you can see it all the way through, because if you can't, then when you're trying to put the finding in, then it's going to be difficult, okay? So just gently tidy it up. So you do one, so that could be one, and then you get another wee bit of clay. And again, you can make a nice wee production out of these as well. You can make a really nice collection. So you can do earrings, you can do a necklace, and if you're really fancy, you can do a bracelet as well. Just press them out like this. And then just do a nice wee edge all the way around. Now remember, because it's clay, you can work with the shape as well, just to make sure it's a nice shape. So again, just smooth out the edges that you want, and if you're like, oh, I want to be a bit skinnier, again, just pinch it with your thumb and forefinger like that, just to get the shape that you want. And just smooth it all the way around, like this. And then just smooth top and bottom. And remember, when it dries a wee bit, or it's leather hard, that means when it's not really soft and squidgy, you can even tidy it up a wee bit more, okay? So again, you want to pull in it, make sure You can see it both sides. And see this raggy bit at the base? You kind of just want to make sure you tidy that up and scoop it away. Okay, just a wee bit. Just so it's nice and smooth for you, okay? So if you let them dry a wee bit, then you can tidy them up. And that'll be you. So you can make a wee collection of wee earrings to give to people, and you've got your birds. And then with any clay left over, you put it into a ball and you can use it for next week. If it's wee scraps, like this, then you can put that into a spare tub and make slip with it. So I've used my spare tub. This is where you can see my guilty things, it's quite sweet. So it's an old sweet tub, and I filled it a little bit of water, not a lot, just a wee bit of water, and I put a scrap bits of clay in it, so it's ready for more slip when I need it for my next project. Okay, and then you close it, make sure you've got a lid for your slip, otherwise it just dries out, and then that's you. And any of the fresh clay that's still really good to go, then you just put that back in your bag, ready for next week. Okay, thank you, bye.